yes, so I did these tutorials. I did a little test, and then I was accepted into the Matchmove department.
Mhm.
And it was in the other building, which was over at Wells Street. So if you cross
Yeah,
Oxford Street with your
yeah,
busy thing, we literally had to push these dinner trolleys
yeah.
across
Cross,
the middle of
it's
Oxford
like
Street.
loads of people crossing across.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. So I was then part of the Wells Street building, and yeah, the Matchmove team really welcomed me, and I think we had another couple of juniors joining at the same time.
Mhm.
And my first film credit, well, the first two film credits were a couple of shots for Harry Potter,
Mhm.
uh, number 7, part 2.
Right.
And I was a big Harry Potter fan,
Oh yeah,
so
wow.
just to get a
Yeah,
couple of shots on there,
yeah,
it was really nice.
yeah. Hi, and welcome to the VFX Artist Podcast. On today's episode, I have Sarah Gatefield, a UK-based Matchmove supervisor, as well as a VR and an AR artist. Now, you might be wondering what Sarah has to do with being an artist in both industries. So let's find out more from her. Finally, finally.
Amazing.
How are you
So
doing?
we meet as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, exactly. The first time, finally.
I know.
Well,
It's all been through
thank you.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was 2 years ago. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, we connected, I think, because there was a period where I was the Matchmove industry, at least for me, because I freelanced, it went quiet and I didn't
Mhm.
understand what was happening. And I thought it was due to Brexit. But then for some reason, because of the way the LinkedIn algorithm works, my connections commented or they liked, and for some reason it came up onto your link, your profile. And then yeah,
Indeed, but
we
it was also because your work was very good. I had a look at your various show reels, and
all right.
your roto anim is amazing. It's really,
Oh,
really
I
good.
try
It's
what
not my
well I
favorite thing to do.
no, I don't enjoy it either.
Really?
But I don't have a choice because I'm a freelancer. Okay, so yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time out because I know it's quite sunny outside and you could be out.
I thank you for taking time to do these as well. I think it's a great idea that you're kind of giving industry experts an opportunity to explain how they
mhm,
started, and then
yeah,
we can also show the younger generation, but also people who might want to change their careers, right?
of
I'm
course.
sure that COVID has kind of shown people that if you can do a job and
Mhm,
you get paid for it
yeah,
and you can enjoy it, then you
yeah,
can change it.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, I think we have a lot to talk about because, I mean, basically regarding your journey into the industry as a VFX Matchmove supervisor, but then also especially because you've transitioned into the VR and AR industry, which I really want to understand more about.
Sure.
But I guess, yeah, first of all, if you don't mind, is it possible for you to just tell us who you are and what you do currently?
Absolutely. So my name's Sarah Gatefield, and I'm a Matchmove supervisor.
Mhm.
But I also dabble in XR, so virtual reality, augmented reality, all of the different realities on the
Mhm.
spectrum. And the reason why I'm interested in it is because I believe it's the future. We're going to move towards headsets and glasses and so on. But it's also because it's so closely related to Matchmove.
Right.
Like people understand now what LiDAR is,
Mhm.
right? You can get it on your iPhone, for
Yep.
example,
Yep.
and people understand what augmented reality is. So when I try to explain what Matchmove is, it's like
Mhm.
a manual version of
Right.
augmented reality.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind that the technology has moved so
Yeah.
quickly in the last 4 or 5 years when I began my journey into XR.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I mean, I've come to know you as someone who moved from Matchmove farming to the VR. But before I jump ahead of that, Jane, I'd like to know more about your journey into the VFX industry. So I'd just like to know
Absolutely.
when it started and who or what inspired it.
For sure. Well, okay, where do we start? My parents, my mum's a Disney child, right?
Okay.
So we had the opportunity to go to Disneyland Paris and Disney World a couple of times when we were growing up.
Yeah.
But she always got us watching musicals and watching Disney movies and so on. And, you know, when I first saw Toy Story,
Yeah.
Pixar's first animated feature-length film,
Yeah.
which was back in 1996, 1997, when it came out in the UK, I was just like, that's the future, right? Imagine you can create animation in the computer and make it look that realistic, and it blew my mind. I was still very much interested in traditional animation, obviously, and tried to recreate things from Warner Brothers and even anime sometimes, you know. But, and maybe I'm showing my age, but at that time, my career service at school didn't really know what this new kind of animation was. We had internet, but it was dial-up.
Yeah, of course.
So trying to download any tutorials, if there were any, very few and far between compared to now. And you had to go to university in order to learn animation or something along those lines. So I did a lot of research. I went with my mum and my dad for like the university open days. And I don't even think Escape Studios was around then.
Probably
or
not.
It might have been really early, right? So my opportunities in the UK were Bournemouth, the Bournemouth Arts College, and you obviously had to be very, very good as a traditional artist, and I was okay, but and then there was a polytechnic in Swansea, which was really good, but that was also going to be more based on traditional art. There was some animation. And then my final one was Bradford University. And this seemed to have a mix of everything, but with a focus on Maya. And I had heard that this was the industry standard back in 2002 or 2002. And I was like, okay, let's just try this one. In the end, it wasn't what I was expecting, because my degree is actually called Computer Animation and Special Effects. To be fair, we didn't do that much computer animation, and a lot of it was self-taught. I was downloading things from digital tutors, if you remember. And you know, we shared the tutorials between us as university students. But it was a lot of self-guided work. But then the thing that Bradford gave me was this chance to go across the whole spectrum with arts and technology. So I was never very good at maths and physics, for example, but we had to do those classes so that we could then, I guess, later apply them to lighting, for example, or working out how technical things work. We also did live drawing classes, you know. So as much as I wanted to just focus on the computer animation, I realized later that actually it was good that I had this overall view. And we learned a little bit about the visual effects pipeline. Had the opportunity to speak with Autodesk, for example, because they come and show off their latest technology and Adobe and all of this. But after university, I was a bit lost, because, you know, if you want to be an animator, you need a lot of patience. You need to understand timing. And obviously we had the guide to animation from the like the 12 principles and so on.
Of course,
but I don't know, it was a difficult period, and I just didn't know how I was going to get there.
But I mean, I think also the sorry to interrupt you, but I realized as well when I came out of university, or whilst I was university, that the animation industry in the UK is quite small, because you may mostly only have maybe say Blue Zoo or Aardman, and most of them were VFX and post-production. So that could have been part of the reason why as well.
Absolutely, actually, yes. And I didn't think that I really knew what visual effects as a whole was, and I don't think I knew at university that there were so many different departments. And so I was lucky enough that when I then made the decision to move to London, so I'd been up north for 4 years, had a great time, made some good friends and everything else, and learned a bit. But obviously I wanted to kind of come back home and reevaluate what was going to be the next step. And I moved to London, and moved in to a complete random house share, as you do when you're 22.
Of course,
23. And I was lucky enough to meet with a girl who was working at post-production company called Envy.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, and she was doing night shifts as a runner.
Okay.
So it was getting teas and coffees in Soho and running reels, right? Physical
I did. I remember.
film.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And it's not that long ago. I promise. It's really not that long ago.
Yeah.
And she, we got chatting, we got on really well, and she was like, look, maybe I can kind of get you in there, or I'm actually going to be starting at another company in a couple of weeks, and they might need some runners as well. And they're called Framestore. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, if you can do something with that, I will do teas and coffees. At that moment, I was doing reception cover work in London, going left, right, and centre. But when you're that age, you just kind of take anything, and it's part of the adventure.
Of course, yeah.
And yeah, luckily, like, I interviewed and I got in, and I started running, and it was so nice to be part of a group where everybody's on like the same career path, if you like.
Yeah.
But it also opened up my eyes to what you could do within visual effects. So we were a team of runners, and the idea was to get teas and coffees for clients, working with high-profile clients, with advertising agencies and so on. I was in the building on Knoll Street, which isn't there anymore because they've moved out of Soho. And that was the commercials building. So they were doing lots of cool adverts. And like one day they even brought in Andrex puppies because they needed references for that. And it's just, I think back at the times now, it's so cool. Right? And we were getting their dinners ready and so on. And then there was like you had to do your time, right? And you did your 8 hours. And then after work or before work, you were then able to use the computers that the big VFX people use as well. So it was long, right? And you were there for maybe 12, 13 hours at the end of the day, but you were kind of all working towards that same goal, which was to get promoted. So I ended up being there, I think, maybe a year and a half, because then I got promoted to head runner. I like leading a team, but also being part of the team, right? So I think management saw something in me with that. And also at that time, I didn't know if I wanted to do modeling or paint and roto or any of these things. It was like a real chance to explore. And something came up in this department called Matchmove, right? And I hadn't heard what Matchmove was at university. They all said, oh no, you can just do animation, that's fine, or maybe a bit of modeling. So Matchmove, I was like, okay, I will give it a go, and did a couple of tutorials. I think I had to borrow, Framestore were very good in that they had like a lending library of all these DVDs. So the Gnomon Workshop, for example. I think that helped a lot of us, right? For a proper internet connection and tutorials. And so I did these tutorials. I did a little test, and then I was accepted into the Matchmove department. And it was in the other building, which was over at Wells Street. So if you cross Oxford Street with your busy thing, we literally had to push these dinner trolleys across the middle of Oxford Street.
Loads of people crossing across.
Exactly. Oh, it's so funny. So I was then part of the Wells Street building, and the Matchmove team really welcomed me, and I think we had another couple of juniors joining at the same time. And my first film credit, well, the first 2 film credits were a couple of shots for Harry Potter, number 7, part 2. And I was a big Harry Potter fan. Just to get a couple of shots on there, it was really nice. And also, as a child, I was obsessed with horses, right? But later I found out I was allergic to horses. So I could never do horse riding lessons. But I read lots of books, and there's a writer called Michael Morpurgo, and he always writes about animals. And one of his books that stuck with me was called War Horse. And it's about this horse that goes through, I think it's the First World War, and he ends up losing his owner, and then later he meets the owner, so spoiler. But we were lucky enough to work with Steven Spielberg and roto animating horses.
Right. Yeah.
And doing cameras. But can you imagine for a junior?
Yeah.
Right, now you have to animate a quadruped.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually never rotomated a quadruped.
Oh,
I can
it's
imagine.
hard, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was amazing. Like, and then I got to work on a lot of different shows. So one of them was Sherlock Holmes 2, for example.
Yeah.
Another one, Wrath of the Titans. And like, we were lucky enough that Framestore had these big clients, and they entrusted us to do good work. And yeah, I was there for a while. And it was also the environment. I'm sure you find this, that when you're part of a team, especially in Matchmove, like everybody's problem solving together, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I remember that bit doesn't have information, but actually I've worked out that it's this, and I enjoy that. It's really nice to share those things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
How did that lead on to becoming a supervisor, a Matchmove supervisor?
Okay, well, so then obviously, as you know, as a freelancer, contracts end, whether it's because there's not enough projects, whether it's just because it's downtime during the industry season or whatever. It did tend to happen quite a lot in Soho, where like the summer was quite quiet, for example. And I then went to Prime Focus Film, and I got to work with anamorphic lenses, which are fun.
Yeah.
And that was on Total Recall, so the reboot. So again, like a childhood watching a film and then being able to work on the next one was really cool. And then after that, again, a contract ended, and I decided to take a little break, because by that time I'd worked consistently for like 3.5 years or something, including the running time. And I was like, okay, what do I want to do now? So I took myself off to Amsterdam with my bike. And it was, I did it like a little bike trip, which was cool.
Nice. Yeah.
And I just wanted to like assess where I wanted to go with this career, because for me, working like for Disney or in animation or something had always, in my mind, meant that I had to go to America. But with the visual effects industry, I realize now that my world was open. There were visual effects houses in India, in Australia, in New Zealand, and it just opened up this possibility to go traveling. When you're younger, or if you don't have family commitments or things, that is exciting. It can be different if you're older, or you have other things that you need to take care of, or you bought a mortgage on a house or whatever. But for me at that moment in time, that was like the dream. Great. Pick up your suitcase, go work in a different country, experience the culture and the people, get to work on some films and commercials. Amazing. So I sent out some CVs, and I was very lucky to have Trixter in Germany reply to me and say, we'd like to have you. Why don't you come out and you work on Iron Man 3? And so that was awesome. Again, I was doing rotomation with all of these suits. But the thing with Trixter that was cool was that I'd known German from school, but it was very, very minimal. But the studio, their main language was English, which was lucky. And they had a majority of German people working there, I think, but then they also brought in international people. So it was such a nice atmosphere. You know? And like when I walked in, have you worked at Trixter?
Yeah, I've been. So the first time I worked there, I had to actually literally go to Munich, and I stayed there, which I really loved. It was my first time in Germany. It's really lovely, and everyone's really nice at Trixter as well. So
absolutely. And I was just amazed that they had all of these old film cameras around in it, like all these film posters. They've got their own cinema.
Exactly.
It was so nice. You've got people that are passionate about working in the industry.
They really work hard.
I think they do, absolutely. And they've got a good link with Marvel, and they do really, really good work. And like I've worked with them maybe 3, 4, 5 times over the course of my career, and I'd quite happily go back, you know.
Yeah, sure,
So after that, like the door was open to go to different places. So I've then worked in Frankfurt for Pixomondo.
Okay.
I worked in Berlin for Rise. Later on, I've worked for MPC in London, and then Method Studios. The thing is, like, it sounds like a lot, but it is also the nature of the work.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
And for me, some people don't like the fact that you do have to constantly move around. But for me, I like it because then it keeps it fresh, and it means you're interacting with different people all the time. Sometimes, of course, it's nice not to have to just do it just for a month and then there's no work and so on. I know that you understand that. But yeah, for me, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's same with me. Yeah.
Indeed. So then when I got to, after this period, maybe I've had like 5 years experience. And I got to go to MPC. And they were putting me in as a lead, and that would be my first position, leading a group of people. And there were a lot of juniors. And my supervisor, he was a really cool guy, and he entrusted me to do it. And I told him, I don't know if I'm ready for this. You know, there's management skills and dealing with people's egos and my ego, and it was like a whole new ball game, right? But I was lucky enough to work on the Martian. And also a little bit of Jungle Book, right? So unfortunately, we weren't working in the building where they were doing all of the cool technological stuff, where they were trying with virtual reality and these things for Jungle Book. And but you know, I knew it was coming, so there was something like there in the background. But my main task with that was looking after people and guiding them in the right way and so on. And I made some really good friends from them as well. And then after some time there, again, contracts finish. And then went what I thought was going to be a mid or a senior position at Double Negative TV. And when they sat me down, this was chatting with the executive producers. So Louise Hussey and Hayden Jones and Stefan, and like these guys have been in the industry for many years, and they have a way of encouraging the best out of you. And so I was going in thinking, right, I'm going to be this particular level and so on, and they wanted to put me forward as the supervisor. And again, it was quite a jump, bearing in mind that I'd only led a team maybe 6 months before that, or less than that. But they instilled in me a confidence, which was really nice. And I ended up leading a team of a mix of mid, but a lot of juniors, 11 or 12 people. We were doing a lot of head tracking for Fungus the Bogeyman. I don't know if you remember seeing that on screen.
I haven't, unfortunately, no, I haven't yet.
It's a classic story, I think. One of these typical British stories for kids. And yeah, there was a lot of head tracking. But it was a really well done project because Mark Pascoe from Double Negative, he was doing all of the supervision and so on. And yeah, during that time, I learned so much about myself, about dealing with other people. Don't get me wrong, there were times where it was hard and I didn't know how to deal with some things. And the majority of the time I was supported. And yeah, it's a whole new ball game when you're not only doing your work, you're kind of approving other people's and dealing with people. But it was also great fun. And Double Negative, you know, they had beers every Friday. Pizza and beers, in fact. And it was a nice atmosphere. So I was with them for a while. And then again, I took a little bit of a break and went traveling. And then came back to Double Negative and got to work on some more things such as Black Mirror. And got one of those episodes, and I think it was actually nominated for a BAFTA, which was cool. It was nice to have led on that project. So yes, there were some exciting projects during that time. But after this, I've been working in Matchmove for like 6 years, and I'd supervised, and that was fun. I just didn't know where to go after that, because for me, I haven't necessarily been interested in lighting. I think that you need to have a really good eye for colour and detail with that. Whereas with Matchmove, I much prefer the technical side
Yep.
and the problem solving, right?
Yeah, same, yeah.
I love doing art and everything else, but I wouldn't consider myself an artist in the same way that lighters are, for
Yeah,
example.
of course. Yeah.
And modeling, again, basic level, but it doesn't interest me enough to kind of pursue that. So I was like, okay, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I still want to continue doing all of this, but and it was because I saw two adverts. So the first was the Kickstarter for the Oculus DK1.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, what's this new thing with virtual reality?
Yeah.
And then the next one was the famous Weta whale that's in the sports hall, where they were showing off the potential for Magic Leap. And I was looking at it and I was like, that's the future. And again, it got me excited, right? I was like, okay, this is where I can try and learn some things. Only thing was, there was a barrier in that I was never very good at maths, right? And unfortunately for this particular new technology, at the time, it was very much about knowing programming. So I ended up trying to take some C# programming lessons because I was using the game engine Unity. I hadn't necessarily thought about looking into Unreal at that time because everybody said that Unity was a bit more accessible for juniors, and then maybe you could learn the blueprint stuff later and so on. And for me, they were making it a little bit more accessible to do things with Google Cardboard, for example. There was support for that using Unity more than there was for Unreal.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, let's do it. I did so many tutorials. We had some downtime at work, so I was lucky enough to use that time. I also ended up getting a 360 camera, a little theta, and trying to understand how to do stitching and sorting out all of this stuff with a software that was called Sky something, but then Adobe ended up buying it. But also, like, I'd got to a level where the Matchmove was good. I knew what I was doing. But now I was in a new world where I was a junior. I was completely starting from scratch. But what I didn't realize, because my confidence then went down, what I didn't realize was that actually this technology is super new. So everybody was kind of working out what to do with this. Like there was so much creativity, but how to get it done, it was kind of difficult. But I was lucky enough to have a supportive partner who was also very creative, and together we made a really good team, because she was more on the creative side and the artistic side, and then I was more on the technical side. And so over the course of a couple of years, we ended up making projects together, and they were super fun. We ended up doing a hackathon together because it was during this time, and like we didn't sleep. We did it for 36 hours or 72 hours. And it was something to do with the United Nations. So the United Nations have the Sustainable Development Goals. So let's try and solve poverty. Let's make sure everyone has access to water and so on. And something that was close to my heart is homelessness. And we decided to use the Theta 360 camera in order to put somebody else in somebody else's shoes. So we wanted to show you what it was like to be homeless. And we spoke with various people that were on the streets during this period. And we were trying different tricks, like putting the camera at the street level, right? As if they're sitting on the floor, and just changing this level gives you a completely different different perspective.
Of course,
But again, we didn't realize that we were exploring new things. We thought, oh well, people must have done this already, but no, it was like a really exciting time for kind of pushing the boundaries and like the creativity, right? As much as I love technology, at the end of the day, it's about the creative things that you can do with it. It's still a tool. Right? So yes, we did various projects together. Another augmented reality application where we did it again for the UN. We were trying to show what climate change was going to do to your city, and so in Unity she modeled the 3D models and so on, and was thinking about the UX and the UI. And then I put everything into Unity and made sure that the interactions worked. And it was kind of like a game, right? It's you scan the floor, and then a city will pop up.
Yeah.
And then it will show you that if you haven't collected enough coins, which means that you haven't recycled enough things,
Okay. Yeah.
then the city's water levels are going to go up until there is no city anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was thinking about like a call to action and getting people interactive with things, and a different way of advertising, if you like. And so all of this then led to, I still want to pursue the VR and AR thing, because that's where I think that the technology is going. I thought in the back of my mind as well that Matchmove might get to a point where it's more automated. Because if you can do things with VR and it knows your position and so on, then surely they're going to be able to do that. And then I'd be out of a job.
Well, that's my thought.
So exactly. So then I'd need to skill up, and as we know in our industry, so much has changed, like within the last 5-10 years, right? And as to work in this industry, I really think it's important that you have that enjoyment of learning, right? Because otherwise, unfortunately, like it just moves so fast. And so then due to various reasons, she was changing her career as well. We moved back to her homeland of Spain. And it was an opportunity for her to do a 3D course. And it was an opportunity for me to join a virtual reality and augmented reality incubator. So it was like a startup. And I joined, my Spanish was minimal at that point. But they were kind of doing things in English as well, and met some really interesting people. The idea was that you had to create something that solved a problem. So we were following this idea of the lean startup, where you iterate and you try to put it out there as soon as possible, but it doesn't have to be all pretty and nice. It just has to kind of serve a purpose. This was a whole new way of thinking for me as well. But I really liked it and actually had a lot of sense. And you had people who were trying to use virtual reality for relaxation. There was another team that were trying to use VR for teaching English. And again, this is really early days, and it's only 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And the new AR kit had come out from Apple, and AR Core came out shortly after that. And there was Snapchat with their Lens Studio. Instagram, I don't think had their, or Facebook didn't have their studio at the time. But there was all these new like SDKs to play around with and to explore, and again pushing the creativity and hoping that it serves a purpose. So I ended up teaming up with a gentleman who loved film, so we all immediately had that interest. And literally we locked ourselves in a room for about 4 hours, and we just like threw out ideas, like here's this crazy idea that we can make an application that helps you make a movie. And in the end, that is something that we ended up doing. So imagine you're using augmented reality in order to place things in the real world so that you can do a location scout, right? You can kind of show the director, oh, this is what it could look like, and you're doing it ahead of time. We also mix that more with parents don't always get to spend time with their kids because of work commitments, because of things that need to be done around the house. But at the same time, and you can tell me if you believe in this as well, at the same time, you know that technology is always going to be there, and you don't want to take away the screen time because actually it's important, right? So you've kind of got to get a balance.
Exactly.
I mean, your child's only 2 right now, but I'm sure it's in
I can definitely there's always regulating it and making sure
exactly. So we wanted to create something where the parents and the kids could combine that shared screen time, and this is before we could do multiplayer in augmented reality, and again not that early, not that long ago. And We were trying to think of ways how to connect them, but the idea was there. And the idea with building the startup is not just that you have a finished product. It's then so that it can scale later. And so, yeah, I was really lucky to work with a gentleman who was living just outside of Madrid in the north of Spain. And he was working with Unreal because that was his background.
Okay.
And so there were some workarounds and so on, but he built us this prototype in Unreal that worked, and we launched it on the Google Play App Store, and it is there now if you wanted to download, but it's only a demo. And there was another gentleman who helped us with all of the UX and the UI, and really he did some really beautiful beautiful UI things, and got us thinking about, well, actually, if you touch this button, then that's not the right way to do it. We should do it like this, or this color is important. And it opened up my mind to so many different ways of doing things. And with VR and AR, we are going to have new ways of interacting with the world, right? It's not just using a mouse or using a keyboard. We're going to use our hands and voice and all of this. And it's fascinating. So big shout out to those two, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to get our app. And off the back of that, we had connections with various companies in Spain, and we went and we pitched it. And that was interesting. That was fun. And they were interested, but it's obviously, it's always the problem, well, you need to have already done this for a year. You need to show me that you've got a certain number of pay-per-clicks and all of that. And I even got the chance to go to Dublin with a startup conference called AR/VR Innovate. And we had really interesting people that came over and looked at our product, and again, it was a chance to pitch and see if you could get any investment. And it was amazing. It was really cool. And only thing with these things is that you still need money to pay the bills. And it's tricky. It's really tricky. And so because of various people having various commitments, we ended that journey. But I'm still super proud that we managed to make something in the first place. And it's taught me a lot, right? And off the back of that, I was then able to get work at a company just outside of London in Reading to do a HoloLens project. And this was, again, this is the future, right? They were very interested in my background because of the visual effects stuff. They were building their own green screen studio. And they had some really nice 2D animators and a couple of 3D people. It was a very, very small team. But they'd managed to get this really good contract with a medical provider. And they had a medical conference in Paris. And we had a very short lead time of 3 months in order to build a connected HoloLens experience where people could interact with a beating heart, right? So imagine people are wearing the HoloLenses, and they can see a heart in front of them, which is animated. But there's also interactive bits so they can move it around. They're going on an audio journey as well, so using spatial audio. And the other part of the project was also then to give a PowerPoint presentation, again, where multiple people could see this at the same time. And again, we're not talking about that long ago, but trying to do multiplayer things when you're on a shared internet in a conference where you've got thousands of people, crazy, right? And so I was working with a gentleman who's super coder, and he ended up creating our own little server, basically, so that people could do it. But there were still problems, right? Because you've got so much interference, and if the interaction gets knocked slightly, or none of the things are aligned, we had to do calibrations of the whole thing. But what I really enjoyed about it was the fact that it related to Matchmove, and it was pushing the technology, and everyone that came onto the stand, they were like, this is amazing. Last year you showed me things on iPads, and now I can see a beating heart in front of me. It was just so the client was super happy, and we were very happy as a team. And then off the back of that, I then did a little bit of freelance work with Milk in London, but was back and forth Spain, because then it was like, okay, the VR and the AR stuff I still really want to do, but I also know that my coding skills are not up to scratch just yet. But I also don't just want to do the coding. I want to do the more artistic stuff, or layout, if you will, like bringing all of these assets in. And I hadn't learned Unreal at that time because it was just another thing to get on board with and so on. And then of course, like, the pandemic happened. But I was really, really lucky in that the same town that we were living in Spain, was the new home of Netflix Europe. Right.
All right. Okay.
And they had a connection with a company called MR Factory, and MR Factory does virtual production.
Yeah.
And I wasn't too sure about what this virtual production was, but I knew that I was interested in it, and they were giving me the opportunity to learn Unreal. They have a massive green screen studio, and they do a lot of taking a car, having the actors and actresses in a car, and then the background is then in real time substituted for the comp. But obviously the beauty of real-time rendering is that you can then change the lights there and then the director can see. At the moment they don't have the LED lights, the LED screens like they do in the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, for example, with ILM, but I think it's going that way. And it's again, it's this creativity, right? Like, the technology is super cool, but it's then being able to give the power of creativity back into the director instead of having to wait for hours and hours for renders, if not days and so on. They're seeing it in real time. I was on hand more for Matchmove and layout, because we had to take those cameras and put them into Maya the majority of the time, sometimes Unreal, depending on the project. But as with all technology, there are times when it doesn't work because of various things, because of interactions and so on, or frame rates and so on. So I found myself doing more Matchmove things. But it was also the opportunity to then learn what Unreal was capable of doing. And it's just, again, it's like, people have been on these courses recently, right? With the Unreal Fellowship. And from going from like almost no understanding of it to then creating these short films, that is putting the power back into people's hands, you know?
Definitely.
And for me, that is the direction that I would like to go in, because it still utilizes my knowledge of Matchmove. And I still think that there will be a need for Matchmove to either tidy up things or to creatively then bring cameras in a layout position, and also then getting to use the cool technology to be able to see those scenes as well, like Jon Favreau did in Lion King, for example. So for me, I would love to have like a mix of this virtual production plus the Matchmove plus the augmented reality and all of it, because I think that's where it's going.
Sure. Wow, what a journey. Your
it's
journey
long.
it's, I mean, a lot of wisdom, a lot of hard work as well.
Thank you.
But I mean, I have a lot of VR and AR questions, but before I do that, I've got a quick Matchmove question for you, which is I'm just wondering why you think there's a stigma behind the role as a Matchmove artist. Just because from experience, it's for some time, and I can't tell if it's still the same, but it seems to be less valued or appreciated, and it usually was classified as an entry level, and as entry level for juniors or runners to move into. Even though it's by far one of the most important departments in the industry, and is very difficult to do because it takes a lot of skill and attention to detail and technical knowledge of cameras and lenses. So I'm just, why do you think that stigma? I mean, I don't know if it's still around, but it used to be. Why do you think it was?
I completely agree with you. And for me as an entry level artist, when I was a runner, my options were paint and roto to go down the comp side, or to do Matchmove, to then probably go into lighting or modeling or one of those other things. But I also know people that have been Matchmove artists or supervisors or whatever for a number of years, like myself.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, at the end of the day, like everybody needs a camera, right? So you're not going to get anything done without a camera, and you will notice when the camera doesn't work, right? It always comes back to us to sort out. I think it's because maybe people don't realize the amount of work that goes into it. They think, and especially with virtual production, I think people get this idea that, oh, the camera's been tracked, so therefore you can just throw it into Maya and it's done. And actually, no, like there's still a lot of offsets, there's still a lot of counter animation that you might need to do, because although it might have picked it up at the time, like there will be interference, there will be this extra jitter, right? And our job as a Matchmove artist is to recreate that. And you need to kind of have a depth awareness. You need to understand where to put those points. And even in a layout way, like that is a little bit more creative. You're doing that from scratch rather than picking points. But you kind of also need to understand what the director wants, right? It's not just a case of like it goes from here to here. So yeah, no, I don't know why there's that stigma, but I wish there wasn't. And people can make a career out of it if they want. But I also think it's important that they stick, they keep learning new technologies, because that's all going to come together as well.
Okay, yeah, sure. And are you able to tell us the difference between VR and AR? Because they sound similar, but I guess they're different.
Indeed. Okay, so we have this spectrum now, which is called XR, and that's standing for mixed reality. If you imagine a line like this, XR is kind of in the middle here. So you've got augmented reality, which is where, think of Pokemon Go, where you use your mobile phone, later it will be glasses, and there are things that are in 3D, and they are placed on real world objects, right? Kind of like Matchmove, as we're saying, right? You can still see the plate, but then you're putting 3D objects or 2D objects on top of those. On the other side, we've got virtual reality, which is a completely different world surrounding you. You can't see the outside. And this world could be whatever you want it to be. And also in terms of headsets, well, at the moment with augmented reality, we only have phones or we have HoloLens, and you can still see the outside world. So you wouldn't get as disorientated because you have like a point to look at and so on. On the virtual reality side, it's a completely covered headset, so your eyes are blinkered. And this is why it's important to have like the virtual reality headset calibrated, because if the headset doesn't know where you are, then you could bump into things, or you could feel a bit dizzy and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What's your, I mean, I think you touched on a bit, but what's your day-to-day like working in the VR and AR industry?
It depends on the project, because I've also done some projects for like with Snapchat, for example, and I've made some filters for Facebook and Instagram, and Zappa, for example. So it could be, this is the thing that I like about Matchmove as well, though. Every day could be different, right? So if it's Matchmove, then you might be getting camera information, or you might be just putting points down, or you might be throwing the scenes together and then passing it along to the next person in the pipeline. With VR and AR, you could be working with the 2D artists in order to get the UX and the UI correct. And there's a lot of problem solving there as well, because when you don't realize that when you use a mobile application, how much thought has gone into that. And now there are certain industry standards where we know that the button that goes next should be on the right, and the button to go back should be on the left. But that took some time to kind of figure out. And it's the same in like virtual reality. Where's going to be best to put an interactive button that tells you to go forward? And because in virtual reality you can do things in 3D space, we shouldn't just be thinking about these 2D buttons. We should be making it more exciting, because in virtual reality you can do anything. So imagine it could be a giant strawberry that is in front of you.
Yeah.
And for that, you need to push it, or you need to hit it, or something. I guess I'm trying to say that like every day could be different, and it could be creative, or it could be technical. It could be a mix of these things.
Yeah. Would you say, I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but would you say the early stages of VR and AR could have been the time where we used to have stereoscopic glasses to watch films at the cinema? Would you think that's close to it? I mean, because I'm looking at
but it
like I'm just thinking back at when I watched, say for example, Avatar. I watched Avatar in 3D with a 3D camera.
Indeed.
I mean glasses, sorry. And and you can tell the difference between having the 3D glasses on and not. So I don't know. You might know more if you think it's close to that, or like
it's been like a gradual thing, right? So I believe one of the first VR headsets played a game called the Sword of Damocles or something.
Okay.
And it was this giant contraption, right, that's had to be suspended from the ceiling.
Okay.
And they had like a set of goggles that could then be worn, and then that person could see very primitive 3D shapes, right? But this idea of like 3D and cameras, it probably also goes back to like the Victorian ages, or even before that, like with the pioneers of cinema. And like maybe you've seen like these strange devices where they've got like a set of binoculars, and then in front of that they've got like a 2D picture, but they split it into two so that you can get two different perspectives. I think it goes back as far as that. But and it, again, Kofi, it's always about the cameras, right? We're never going to escape these cameras, right?
No,
they're gonna help us with everything.
Yeah, definitely. You touched on a bit earlier, but because I had a question about that, which I put saying that changing industries or departments usually mean you have to start in a lower level, and most of the time, that affects your pay cut as well. So I was wondering how your transition has led you to become a senior in what you do currently in the VR.
Yeah, it varies. But you know, even as a freelancer, it can also vary depending on how many people they need at the time, depending on what the budget is. I wouldn't say that I'm a senior in terms of the programming yet. I'd still say that I was a junior, even though I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years. But in order to maybe increase the salary, I always bring my background of visual effects, and that is very valuable. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're working in visual effects already, you have a base, right? So that knowledge is transferable, and it's this crossover of games technology and film technology that are coming together. And then the next part of the puzzle is to then learn the coding or the blueprints in Unreal, for example. It is a different way of thinking, and I still struggle with it, but luckily we have so many tutorials that we can utilize that now.
You mentioned a bit about real time. I'm just wondering, is that different from VR and AR?
So imagine instead of being able to wait for a render, you are seeing that render as it would be literally in real time. And it's actually thanks to the Unreal Engine, a little bit of Unity as well. I don't know why they haven't caught up in the same way as Unreal. Unreal's been really good with their marketing recently, but Unity was also offering real-time rendering with Octane, for example. But for whatever reason, the visual effects houses have now gone with Unreal, or they're doing their own. So it's mainly for the render times and being able to see the lighting effects and the color changes and changing materials and all of this without waiting for a render.
That's great. I think you've touched I think you've pretty much answered all of my questions, but I was curious about what softwares you use and what problems you're trying to solve with AR and VR, but I think you've touched on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I guess, like you said, a lot of Unreal and Unity, like from the beginning, as you started with. And yeah, I mean, the use cases are vary, right? Because depending on projects and what clients and customers want, I guess.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But it's also about trying to think outside the box as well.
Mhm.
Like, the beauty of this software is also it's free, which I think is incredible.
Mhm.
So therefore, anybody can literally like try and start with it and make
Mhm.
something. And the only limitation then is your imagination.
Mhm.
Obviously, there will be technical things as well, but
Yeah.
there are ways to get around it.
Yeah. Okay. One question I think you didn't answer, which is quite good, is that do you think that do you think there are risks to addiction with VR and AR? Just like we saw, I watched Ready Player One, and there was scenes where addiction was part of the scenes. Do you think it's a risk?
So addiction of being in a virtual reality place.
Yeah, or using VR, or do you think we'll get to that, or probably try and implement stages where we don't, like society don't get to the stage where we get addicted to it?
I see. Okay. Wow. I mean, part of me wants my world to then be a movie set, right? I've always had this idea of I could be walking down the street and then suddenly the dinosaur from Jurassic Park just walks in front of me, right? I really like it. But yeah, then Ready Player One and various other films like Minority Report was one of my favorite films. And Matrix, right? It's setting a future or a society, where we are dependent on escaping from real life. And that is a bit dangerous, isn't it? And anything that's in excess is difficult to deal with. So I would hope that it becomes something as a tool, as a way to connect people. And the fact that you could maybe be in a hologram and visit your grandparents, for example, but using it as a tool rather than a way to completely leave real life, because that's difficult. I have to think about that.
Yeah. Do you know anything that we don't know coming from that industry? I mean, in terms of looking at the future, do you know, are there anything that, I don't know, society are not aware of?
I haven't got any insider information about the new Apple glasses, if that's what you mean. No, I think you make a good point in that you worry about what society could then go down to, because social media has had a massive impact on us for the last 10 years, right? If not more. And maybe with the rise of AI and like you've got computers now that can create masterpieces, right? And they do that of their own accord. Perhaps some of this needs to be regulated. And I think for me as well, I always want to use technology for good and to make a difference. I love doing the entertainment stuff, and if that like makes somebody happy, that's wonderful as well. But I think this kind of technology can be used for educational reasons or for changing somebody's perspective about something. So good advertising, if you like. But yes, it's true. We're going to have to be careful with when the robots like creep up on us.
When do you think it will become mainstream, VR and AR?
So I'm not an Apple girl. I've always been more Microsoft. But I'm a little bit angry with Microsoft because they've recently done a defense contract with their HoloLenses. So unfortunately, that goes against what Bill Gates likes, which is supposedly looking after the environment, and it's going against it. But I think the ultimate thing will be Apple has such good design ideas that they will set the precedent for these glasses. And I've been waiting for this like since a couple of years ago. And they've been laying the foundation. They've put out the AR kit to developers for free so that people can then build for their ecosystem. It's very, very clever. And I think that mainstream, maybe in the next couple of years, and I think maybe even the pandemic has accelerated things a lot, because we now do things so much more virtually. Not saying that we always want to do it. I definitely want to go back to the office and interact with people. But I think that there is now a way for people to communicate, and it will be VR headsets that become cheaper, less heavy. People will want to wear them. Or maybe it'll be with these augmented reality glasses. And next couple of years, I reckon.
What advice would you give to anyone looking to be like what you do, career wise, either as a Matchmove artist or as well as possibly transition into a different department, for example?
Sure. I just want to say that anything is possible, right? Like, I'm somebody who finds maths and physics really, really difficult, and yet I'm doing a job which is really technical, both in Matchmove and in virtual and augmented reality. And there will be setbacks, of course there will, but at the end of the day, it's about learning. And in the lean startup, they always tell us it's like you need to fail, and fail again before you get anywhere. And there's an entrepreneur called Gary Vaynerchuk, and his whole thing is that he loves failing. And it's a different mindset, because we're taught from a young age that you need to get a certain number of grades, and you need to be, I think you mentioned on one of your LinkedIn posts as well, this is the whole idea of grading somebody. But at the end of the day, if they don't like that particular thing, then they should pursue something. And if we have the ability to do something that we want to do and we get paid for it, then that's amazing. I realize that that's not accessible for absolutely everybody. But if you can make it happen. It's taken me 3 years to get to this stage, right? But also, what is 3 years in a 10-year career? Right? It's not very much. And you've got to enjoy it. Because the pandemic has shown us that life is short as well.
Okay, of course. My last question is: Do you miss being a Matchmove artist?
No, because I'm still doing it.
Okay,
I still get called in to fix tracks and so on, and it keeps me on my toes. And no, not at all.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. That was very insightful. And I think people will find it interesting, because usually people tend to stay in the same industry or same department, and they don't tend to transition or try new things. So it's good testament to know and to see that you're balancing both, actually, and both are very technical. But I think the key point is that you find both very interesting and you enjoy doing both. So I think that's really good.
Absolutely. What about you, Kofi? You going to stay with Matchmove, or are you going to try something else?
Well, so like you said, I do enjoy the technical aspects and the problem solving of Matchmove. And I do enjoy a lot of photography, but I've realized that I don't actually enjoy doing it for clients, because I had a studio, but then doing it for clients, it's just I don't enjoy the creative part of it. So I do it more on a personal basis. And lighting is something that I was very interested in, because of working with a lot of the cameras and taking a lot of photos, you have to understand lighting, and it's something that I find very interesting. So it's something that I might need to look into. But then also I realized I'm not that technical. It's tricky. I don't know. I find myself to be not that technical. And then so when it comes to like problem solving, I just can't articulate things faster enough, quicker enough. So that's something I need to work on. But lighting will be something I'd like to explore.
Okay, sure. And anything on set?
Oh yeah. On-set was
Yeah.
something that I really wanted to do. I was talking to Yuri from my previous episode, but I don't think I can do that right now because of family life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
long hours.
Yeah,
Very
it
much.
is. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind being on set, say every now and then, but as a full-time or as a freelance everyday job thing, I don't think I'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that department was inspired from just actually from National Geographic because I loved what their photographers do, and I always admired to be somewhere crazy just taking photos of like animals or nature. So that was what inspired my interest.
It could still happen. You just never know.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
your child will grow up and then come with you,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you never know. Yeah. So
I think you're doing a really good thing with this. It's going to be really insightful and keep going with it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought college, because when I was coming out of university, I did a lot of work experience on my third year, and it was very helpful for me to get work and get my foot in the door, because it's meeting people and making connections and learning how the industry works. So yeah,
That is what it is, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of my contacts have come from my running days.
Yeah.
They remember that I was a good worker, and then you apply that same ethic to then your everyday job, right?
Yeah.
And like always be kind to people, always be nice to people, because you never know then where they're going to end up. You never know where you're going to end up. And if you can, try to pay back some of the kindness to other people as well.
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I don't
thank you
don't
so
want to take
I
don't want to take too much of your time. It's been eye-opening and very interesting. But yeah,
awesome.
definitely, yeah. Thank you.